Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back here with this 2017 Cadillac XT5, and on today's video we are going to be talking about how to replace both the left and right tail light as well as the third brake light up top. So this will be a useful video, of course, if you've got a tail light that is malfunctioning or if you've been a little fender bender and you need to replace one of them. I'm not having either of those problems. What I'm going to be doing is replacing my tail lights with the optional accessory tail lights that Cadillac has for these vehicles. So just like the SRX before it, since day one the XT5 has had some optional tail lights that Cadillac makes that you can buy off their accessories page or a bunch of other places like eBay. In fact, all of the 2020 XT5 Sports, the top trim, actually come with these tail lights that I'm going to be installing today standard. So you may be seeing more of them out there. Alright, so we've got quite the box of goodies here that arrived earlier this week. These are the accessory tail lamps. Hard to really appreciate them right now since they have a bunch of protective plastic on them, which I'm going to leave on them until I get them installed just to protect them. But they have a clear lens, and then the lights themselves light up red. And we'll have a bunch of shots of these at the end, of course, so you can really see what they look like. I will have a part number for this kit in the description below. I'm also going to give you guys part numbers for the individual lights in case you need to replace one, as well as the original lights that I'm taking out. I'll make notes of what all those part numbers and list everything in the description below. So we've got the left and right tail light, of course, and then the third brake light, which I'm actually kind of excited about too, just from aesthetics point of view, because this whole assembly is black, and the spoiler, if you want to call it that, on the XT5 is also black. So I think this will kind of look a little bit better than the original factory third brake light, which kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. The kit does come with some instructions, or at least my kit did. These aren't very good instructions, which of course is why I'm making this video. They are the official GM instructions, but just like the when I did this kick plate here, which I'll put a link to that video up here in the top corner, the instructions also have you referring to other instructions. So in other words, this was on a computer, and you could click on it and pull up the other instructions. So there's huge chunks of the instructions that are missing, but we're going to try to figure it out today anyway. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about how to get this tail lamp out. So there's going to be some fasteners along the side, which we'll get to here in a minute. On the SRX, this was a much easier process because basically once you got that out, the light would come off. I've got a video on that, so I'll put a link up there in the corner. But what makes it complicated on the XT5 is that the tail lamps have a lip along the bottom here. So there's kind of a closer shot of that lip. And that lip is what the bumper snaps into. So that means we're actually going to have to pull this bumper loose somewhat in order to get this light out of here. Now I think the actual factory instructions have you pulling the whole bumper off, but we really shouldn't need to do that. We just need enough wiggle room to pull this light out. And so the first step is going to be to loosen this piece of trim right here, and then we're going to be loosening this piece enough to give us room to wiggle this light out. So first let's look at how this guy snaps off, and then we'll go from there. So this is just a piece of plastic basically, and there are some plastic clips that clip it into the body, and there's also a tab at the end of it where it meets into the body. So we really need to loosen it up here where we can pop it out of the bottom of the bumper here. Hopefully I'm not going to regret that I'm doing this upgrade after I did the mud flap upgrade. So we'll see how easy it is to work around those. So what I'm hoping I can do is actually reach up in here and at least get one of these clips popped loose. I've seen people mention just pulling on it, but my concern would be to break those plastic clips, and this never want to seat down exactly right again. So I'm just pinching the little wings and I'm pushing out on this. And that one's loose. So I can look in here and I can see this clip. So I'm going to see if I can just use a screwdriver to release it. Probably could get to it by pulling off the wheel liner. I'm just trying to see if we can do it without pulling the whole wheel liner off. And there we go. So now this clip and this clip are loose, and it should lift out of the bottom. Yep, just like that. And here's hopefully a better angle of what we're dealing with here. So there's the first clip, and there's the second clip, and you can see, you can get a better view now of how they pinch together. That's what holds them in. And the reason that we got to pull this off is there's a 10mm bolt right here that needs to be loosened so we can pull this back. So I'm actually just doing the same method up here to release this top clip without breaking it. And you can't get to it. There we go. So I just pulled this back and then use this little pointy screwdriver to again release this clip. And you may think, well, why don't you just reach up under the wheel liner? But I actually pulled the wheel liner back and there's no access to these clips here. You could access from behind the wheel liner if you needed to, but this one up here is up in the body and you can't get to it. So I think that'll give us enough wiggle room to get to this bolt. All right, so here's a close-up. I've got the trim pulled back, and this is the bolt in question that needs to come out. And I think I misspoke earlier and I said it was a 10mm. It's actually a 7mm. So let's go ahead and pull that out. All right, so we've got that bolt out of the top there. So let's get the bolts out of the other side. All right, so this panel is also held in place by a couple T20 Torx fasteners. This one is under a cover. The bottom one is not, or at least it's not on my car. So let's first pull off this little protective cover. And actually, the bottom is a T20 Torx, and the top looks like probably another 7mm, so my mistake there. Yep, it's another 7mm up top. Alright, so we've got those two fasteners out. Let's see how close we are to loosening this quarter panel here. Alright, that was really the most annoying part. What you hopefully saw me doing there was trying to work the bumper loose from underneath the taillight. And the reason that's so hard is the taillight has this bracket underneath here. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's these clips. And the bumper has corresponding holes, and these clips keep it from coming out. So what I finally realized to do was to pull the bumper back as far as I could, where I could actually see these clips, and carefully, without boogering up the bumper or the light, use a flat blade screwdriver to push these in to release them. So that was the toughest part so far. Hopefully it's smooth sailing from here on out. So now I think we have enough give to pull this light out. So let's work on that next. All right, so I'm sure you figured out what's next. We got to pop these little covers off. And it looks like we've got more of the T20 Torx. Nope, these are smaller ones. All right, so these guys are T15 Torx, because why have the same size throughout the project? That'd be way too easy. All right, so as you can see, the taillights do have these guideposts on them here. So there's corresponding holes in the body, and if it's like the SRX, there's some rubber around them, so there's going to be a little resistance. So basically what we're going to do is the whole taillight should slide this direction, and then hopefully we have enough clearance to get it out. All right, so finally have that light pulled off, and now we just have to remove this one electrical connector. So this little red tab is going to pull up, just like that, and then push down on this tab right here, and the connector should pull straight off, just like that. So one tip I'll give you, I was really struggling with getting this light off, because in my mind, with these posts all pointing backwards, the light needed to pull directly backwards off the car. But actually the light sits like this, so the posts are not sitting absolutely horizontal. You've got to pull up a little bit as you're pulling out. And once I realized that, it finally started popping loose. And you'll hear it making some kind of awful noises as those rubber seals kind of release. And this is what we're left with here, and these are the little rubber seals that were holding the taillight in place. So that's kind of providing some resistance when you're pulling it out. All right, so I think we should be ready to go ahead and install the first new taillight finally. Don't forget to lock that electrical connection. So yeah, it looks like the top one has to go in before you line up the bottom ones. That's probably why it was so tricky to get it out. I think they're all lined up. I'm just going to do a quick test to make sure this light works. All right, thankfully it does work. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this back in. All right, so now what we've got to do is basically the reverse of what we just did. So let's go ahead and get these two T15 screws back in place. And once I get it started, I'm going to kind of push on the light up here at the top, just to make sure it's seating up against the car nice and flush. And you'll notice the screw kind of pulls the light in a little bit too. All right, so let's go ahead and lock the bumper back in place. And we'll go ahead and put in these two bottom bolts back in. And don't forget the little cover. All right, so we'll just finish popping this in. And then, of course, don't forget to put the 7mm bolt in back up here. And then, of course, finally, we'll push this little trim piece back in, starting up at the top.
And don't forget to put the bottom of it in first before you do these two clips, so it kind of sits down in it. And then of course the moment we've all been waiting for, peeling off that plastic. And like I said, I will be getting some better video of these later on, but initial reaction is this looks fantastic. And before I tackle the other side, here is something that you don't get a chance to see too often, and that is the original style compared to the accessory style. All right, and so of course the other side should be pretty much the same process, mirrored from the what we just did. All right, I will say this side went much faster than the other side now that I knew all the little nuances of it. I mean, I fought with that other side for, seemed like a couple hours, although some of that was because I was stopping to film certain parts, but this side 20 minutes, so it'll go much faster your second time around. All right, let's talk about this third brake light. So the official instructions have you pulling apart the interior trim on the hatch, which of course I do have a video on if you want to go that route, and then pulling the spoiler off. I'm wondering if there's a shortcut. This might be a waste of time, but if you'll notice, let's see if I can get this to focus on this. Up under where the third brake light is, you can actually see one, it's hard to see because of my dash cam, 2, and then the 3, I think those are Torx screws. So I'm wondering if I take the Allen wrench style Torx tools I have, if we could just take those screws out and pull that third brake light off and skip pulling the whole hatch apart and pulling the spoiler off. Let's find out. And so here is the back of the third brake light, and you can see here we've got the 3 holes there where presumably those 3 Torx screws go in. Now there is a cover, I believe, over, yeah, there's going to be a cover on the bottom, so this would kind of have to slide out from between the top of the spoiler and that cover. And it might not be possible because if you notice, there's these secondary, almost like alignment holes. I don't know if you can see them. So yeah, there we go. So you can see that secondary hole. So there may be some sort of nub that would keep this from happening, but why not try it? Those screws are gonna have to come out eventually anyway. I can get at it with this little, it's a T15. Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to go the official route here. So no shortcuts for us today. So I will go ahead and pull the trim off, and I'll probably just speed that part up because I've got a whole nother video on how to pull the trim off. And then I will we'll come back when we're ready to pull the spoiler off, which I do not have a video on. So quick programming note, for the next couple of minutes I actually forgot to turn my microphone back on, and so I am doing this voiceover after the fact. So if it sounds better or worse, that's why. So first, in order to get the spoiler off, we do have two of these Torx T27 bolts on either side of the hatch. And so you can actually see these Torx bolts before you even take the interior trim off. But you do have to take the interior trim off to get to some 10mm bolts that are actually under the trim. So there is a 10mm bolt kind of hidden up in this hole right here. And there's a 10mm bolt out in the open here, and another one that's easy to see right there. And there's one up in there and also there. And I just realized I didn't have my microphone turned on, so I guess I'll have to go back and edit that. So a 10mm deep cell will be your friend here. And so now we'll do these ones that have the bolts recessed in the holes, and we'll just be real careful that we don't drop them. And you can actually just reach your hand up on this one and kind of make sure that it stays seated on the end of the socket. And yeah. And pretty much if you just pull the socket straight down carefully, the bolt will stay. It's got a nice little built-in washer. Alright, so that's it's 5 10mm bolts, and so there are still a couple of clips to release. So there's a couple plastic fasteners that we want to go ahead and see if we can't get them released before we try to pull the spoiler off. So I'm going to take this wrench and kind of squeeze it and push it up, and the whole spoiler is now moving. So kind of try to release that as best as we can. See if I can pull it up out of the hole a little bit. That side's pretty much released. This other side, there's one more on the left, but it's right back in here, so I'm not going to be able to really show you what I'm doing. But it's the same kind of thing. I'm going to pull up on the spoiler first and see if... No, it's still in there pretty good. Probably going to need some needle nose pliers to reach that. I'm going to get the needle nose pliers in there. All right, I think it just came loose. And something I had done is, while I got the other side loose, was I stuffed a rag in the first side that I popped loose on the right. And I think it's completely loose now. So now we just need to find a way to safely pull it off the car without scratching something. All right, so it looks like we need to disconnect the electrical for the third brake light, which seems to be this little guy right here. So you pull that out, and that little center tab, you push down on it and it comes out. And then this is going to be the hose for the washer. And it looks like we've got a little clamp on it here. Sure, there's a specific tool for this, but see if we can do it with a screwdriver. Okay, that's actually a plastic clamp, no big deal. Probably did that with my fingers. Yep, and then that little hose came out. And then I think this is just gonna, rubber thing's gonna push through the hole. I want to put my hand up here so that we don't knock the... All right, now, and actually we have one more wire. Not really sure what this is, some sort of an antenna or ground or something. So that needs to come out of that little box there. So now let's see if this spoiler is loose. And it is. So if you ever wanted to know what the XT5 looks like without its little spoiler on top, this is it. And it's not too bad to get it off, but I've noticed a lot of the XT5s that have had these optional taillights installed, they have not replaced the third brake light. So I'm guessing the added time and effort is why that is. But kind of strange looking. I do like the design where they've got the windshield wiper tucked up under that spoiler. A lot better than the design on the SRX. All right, so I've got the spoiler laid out on an old blanket, and now we've got to figure out how this third brake light comes out. So from what I can tell, it's just this piece of plastic that needs to come out. Of course, we've already removed these 3 Torx bolts that we were unsuccessful in taking a shortcut on. And let's see how this piece of plastic comes off. Got these directions here, but they are not very good. So interesting thing is this is a separate, or appears to be a separate piece here, and in the instructions they show you just removing this piece, but I'm looking up under here and I see plastic welds that weld these 2 pieces together. So it would appear that the instructions are incorrect. So I do see some screws, some standard Phillips screws around here. They don't talk about it in the instructions, and I guess all we can do is try it and see what happens. The little screw was torqued on there so much I couldn't really get it off. All right, yeah. It looks like once you take out these Phillips screws, this whole black part slides off. I'm not going to pull it all back the whole way because there's some gaskets on either side that I'm trying not to tear. But I think that will give us enough space to pull this light out. So it's just kind of crazy that the instructions are so wrong. I don't know if they intend you to just break these 2 pieces loose, but they are definitely not going to come apart easily. So you can see I can kind of push this back enough and then lift this out. And just as I suspected, there's some little nubs that are preventing the light from just sliding out. Wow, so we've got a dead frog in here. That's nice. Yep, dead frog. Gross. I don't know how long that's been in there. All right, so it looks like we've got a little gray tab to pull the electrical loose. Maybe pull it out first. So pull the little tab out and then press it in and it comes loose. All right, so we've got the new center brake light here. And I can see some sort of a metal rod that goes through this spoiler that's connected to this random wire we took loose earlier. So it does appear to be some sort of an antenna if I had to guess. So just gonna line that back up. And then we will slide this back in. All right, so that's all lined back up, and we'll just screw it back together. All right, and of course we don't want to forget these 3 Torx bits up here, or Torx screws up there that we took out earlier. A little easier to get to now. And again, those are T15s. And that should be it. And just to recap, you've got 3 screws inside, one on the end, and then, actually, I'm sorry, 4 screws on each side. 1 here, and then 3 facing this direction, the same thing on the other side. And then this whole piece kind of slides back and tilts up. And so you can see now that we've got a much more sleek look, in my opinion, with this whole bar being black here. And I just think that really should have been that way from the factory, in my opinion. So let's get this back on the car, which should be pretty much the reverse of what we just did. All right, so don't forget, we do have some metal posts coming out of the bottom of this. We want to be careful not to scratch the paint. And we do have some wires that we need to pull through first. Although I'd say this is going to be easier than taking it off was. Yeah, it just kind of falls into place. All right, so now we just need to put the bolts back in inside. I'm gonna go ahead and get our electrical reconnected before anything else and check and make sure that 3rd brake light is working. We got to pull that grommet all the way back through so water doesn't make itself down into the hatch. Don't forget to hook up our windshield washer hose and 3rd brake light. And I'll go ahead and tap the brakes and let you guys see if it works. I'll have to replay it and see. Okay, so that 3rd brake light is working, and so now it's a matter of fastening it back down, which is basically just the reverse of what we did before. So a little tip, I do want to start on the middle ones to ensure we don't end up with a bulge in the middle of the spoiler. So kind of tighten down the middle and work our way out. Make sure it settles down nice and flat in the middle. All right, everyone, that about does it for this video. That was quite the project for sure. I really like the look, and it's a little bit cloudy and dreary, so I'll be sure to get some better shots of these lights once the weather cooperates. And so be sure to stay tuned, because I'm sure I'll have some
some sweet video of these lights coming up next.